Welcome to another podcast episode of Rinse and Repeat with Ilse Wolfe at Wolfe Property. I have an extremely special guest today, Rob Abasolo, aka Robuilt, not only co-host of the world's largest real estate podcast called Bigger Pockets, but we have a great relationship. We've met each other at BPCon in Orlando just over a month ago. Welcome, Rob.
That's right. Hey, we did it. We followed through. We took action. We're doing. We were able to get through all of the time zone differences, and we're here. We're here live.
We're live. This is just so cool because I thought I was coming to BPCon to, learn cool topics, learn different strategies about the US, one for one, see how I can replicate them for my portfolio, and then also for my clients. But what I did not expect was complete, the complete outweighing factor, which was the people I met, including yourself. It was life transformational. Just the experience was well beyond the auditorium, well outside of the learning rooms. It was like all the great relationships and people with the same mindset, doing the thing, learning. And it was so awesome to meet you, I think, even on the first morning, actually.
Yeah, I think so. And that's what I always tell people when it comes to conferences and conference season. Like, look, the speakers are always great. That's what sells tickets. That's what gets people to go to the conference. But the actual component that makes a conference like magical is the actual people and the networking. I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many conferences I've been to in the last year. I've literally not gone to actually see any of the speakers. I just stood outside talking to people. So that's kind of how I approach it. I think it's more about the networking. And I just had my own conference here in Houston, Texas, sold it out. And the speakers were all amazing. I mean, again, that was really useful for my marketing, but always I know that when people show up, they're going to meet other like-minded people and they'll go to the next level just through those relationships.
It's so true. Like I think I'm now hooked. It's like, where's the next one? What's the next thing I can attend? Because it's all the value is actually what comes following. I'm now doing my first deal in the States because of people I met in Starbucks that morning. There's all sorts of different avenues that you just cannot foresee could even be a possibility until those magic moments happen. So
Yeah.
on that note, you have so much going on. So like, how do I even introduce you and how I don't even know. I mean, Bigger Pockets co-host is huge in its own right. I've been listening for years, huge fan, love the content, love how you present. Americans are far more articulate than Kiwis as well, which helps. But you are a short-term STR investor. So over here, we basically know that as Airbnb. That's basically all
Mhm.
we have. But so STR investor, basically 100% STR for your portfolio. You're a property coach, which I definitely want to get to as well. But how do you split your time? Like, how do you kind of go, here's my elevator pitch? I feel like there are a lot of strings to your bow.
Yeah, it's a hard one. So I guess first and foremost, I'm an Airbnb host slash investor slash operator. I just say short-term rental because that when you say short-term rental, that encompasses everybody, right? Verbo.com, booking.com, anything that's
Totally.
1 to 30 days. That's what I do. And I'm also a content creator. I started a YouTube channel called the Robuilt channel a couple of years ago. And that YouTube channel is now the largest Airbnb YouTube channel in the world, which I am very proud of. And I pretty
Wow.
much just teach people how to break into the industry. And I try to give as many people like accessible ways to get into the real estate industry as possible. Because when I got started, I didn't have a ton of money. I didn't have a trust fund, although a lot of people like to say that I do on my TikTok. I was like, trust fund, baby. And I'm like, nah, man, we were broke growing up. But I'm a firm believer that education should be accessible, which is why, I think my best content is all free on YouTube. And for people that kind of need the more hand-holding stuff, then I work with them too. But at the end of the day, I think real estate and short-term rentals are something that anybody can do. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be hard, but I always think it's going to be a bit of hard work.
Oh, I agree. That's so well said. And also, I just lost my thing. So, okay, so you're the largest STR YouTube channel. You're the world's largest real estate podcast. But on the global scale, outside of real estate, you are co-hosting Bigger Pockets as one of the top 40 world's largest podcasts. Have I got that right?
Yeah. I think I just looked that up about a week ago. And on all of their charts, we were like number 39 or something like that. So technically, we are the top 39 podcasts in the world, I guess.
That's incredible. And how many episodes have you done, or how many years have you been on Bigger Pockets co-hosting for?
Ooh, man, I think this is going to be, I think this might be my second year coming up in January. So by that definition, I've done just over, man, I think that means I've done like 200. Hold on. How many? I do 8 a month. Wow. I never thought I'd have to answer this. I do 8 a month. I think I do 100 a year. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'm coming up on 200. Pretty
Wow,
crazy.
that is crazy to slot those in regularly, consistently as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the thing. Once you start, you have to keep up that cadence, right? So,
That's right. But that's honestly like yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, content is interesting because I'm typically talking about stuff that I'm doing. So I'm
mhm,
never really like struggling to figure out what I should talk about or what I should riff on because most of the time, I mean, I'm doing real estate and that's a lot of coaches and a lot of people in this industry that kind of teach aren't necessarily doing. And I told myself
mhm,
early on that if I'm going to make my living coaching, I mean, I make my living 100 different ways, but if I'm going to make a significant living from the coaching side of it, then I want to always be in the weeds and entrenched and really just figuring things out. So every day I get new gray hairs. For every house I buy, my head gets a new set of gray hairs. And I'm still figuring it out, to be honest. I think that's how most real estate investors are. Like, I'm in this thing 7 years and I'm obviously much faster, much more nimble, but I still kind of come across crazy scenarios in my Airbnbs. Like, a bear broke into my property like a year ago. And like most people would really freak out about that kind of thing. But for me, I'm like, oh yeah, just another Tuesday over here.
just another bear in another
Yeah.
house.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
exactly.
So, for listeners and viewers who have not seen your amazing content until now, or know much about you, just give us a little summary. So, you're based in Houston. You're the STR guy for sure. Yeah, a little picture of what sort of portfolio you have, the strategies, and I think that what I really want to dive into following this is all the acronyms that you've basically, I feel like you've coined. I know no one in
Hmm.
New Zealand would have heard beyond other people's money. I think what they're really going to want to take away to try and rinse and repeat here is apply some of the really innovative ideas you have. And you're saying, hey, I didn't start with a silver spoon or trust fund. You've really hustled to build up. And I love how you have done that progressively. So let's first of all just start with, okay, what's your snapshot now? And then we're going to dial it all the way back.
Yeah, sure. So I have about 20 short-term rental units slash properties that are all individual single family homes or condos, apartments, thing like that. Some of them I own. I would say 17 of those 20, maybe 16 of those 20 I own. And then the other 3 or 4 I rent from someone else. And that is, we'll get into that in a little bit. That's called OPP, other people's property. And then I've got a 20 unit motel as well that we're renovating right
Oh,
now. And then I'm working on a 24 unit, $12 million deal at the moment. And then like a 20 unit, $12 million treehouse development deal right now, too. So it's kind of like, once it starts rolling, these $12 million deals, apparently, it's funny that I have two $12 million deals in the works. They just kind of start showing up and making a lot more sense than buying a single family home.
totally. I think it's a progression, right? And I know that we're both coaches, and when you start out as an investor, you're really you have to build the resource, right? You can't go out there and buy a $12 million project. You have to
Right.
scaffold up with time. But the thing is, knowing what we know now, we just have all this knowledge, and we want to go to someone who's in their first or second year. Here's how we can help you shortcut like 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. If only we knew now, like back then, sorry, what we know now, how much higher performing the portfolio could be overall, right? But I
Right.
totally know what you're saying. Like, now that you're attracting that kind of deal, that's what you'll notice, and you can never go back.
Well, yeah, if you think about it this way, like let's just break it down from a short-term rental standpoint. When I run a short-term rental and I get it set up, I've got to go and set it up. I got to put the couches in there. I got to buy the cutlery. I got to do all that good stuff, right? And then I've got to hire a cleaner, a pool guy, a landscaper, pest control person, handyman, contractor, and then I've got to manage that property. Okay, so the amount of work that just went into those things is the same amount of work, whether it's a single family home or whether it's like a 3 unit apartment complex, or whether it's like a 20 unit apartment complex. It takes a little bit more time the more you go up. But for me, managing this 24 unit deal that we're working on right now is effectively going to take maybe like 2 times the amount as like a normal house, right? So it's worth it
Hmm.
for me. So as I get more skilled at this, as my time becomes more valuable, it doesn't make sense to focus my time on a low cash flowing property when I could be out here focusing on multi-million dollar properties.
Amazing. So when you say we, have did you start investing yourself and you've built up a partnership system, or who's we?
Yeah, so I've got probably like four sets of partners or so. And so when I got started into this, I'll give you a quick breakdown. I bought a house and I was living in an apartment. And when I moved into the house, we were like, well, shoot, what are we going to do with this apartment? We were going to have to break that lease. And we were really broke at the time. And it was going to cost us like thousands of dollars to break the lease. And so I was like, hey, I was told my wife, I was like, I heard of this website. It's really random. So you basically you put your apartment on there, and then strangers will pay you money to stay at your property every night. And obviously that website was Airbnb, right? And she was like, "Are you sure that's going to work?" I was like, "I don't know. I mean, let's try it. Let's list the apartment until the lease runs out." And so we listed this apartment on Airbnb, and little did I know that I'd be making $1,000 to $2,000 a month profit. I don't know what
Hmm.
that translates to your dollars, but
Uh,
$1,000 to $2,000 profit is pretty good over here.
it's basically twice now. So your 2000's 4,000, and that's
Okay.
insane. Like no one
Yeah.
positively cash flows 4,000. So that's mega.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a big deal for me because I had, you know, about $1,000 of student loan debt. And yeah, it was just kind of enabling things. And the fact that I didn't even own the property kind of blew my mind. Right. And so I go on to basically pitch two friends on this idea. And I'm like, guys, you are not going to believe this. There's this thing called Airbnb, and we can rent other people's property and we can furnish it and list it on Airbnb. Here's the deal though, I'm out of money, but you guys have money. And if you pay for this, I promise I will make you more money. And they were like, yeah, sure. What could go wrong? So they go on to basically fund these apartments and, you know, kick in a couple $1,000s. We were really scrappy back in the day. And little did I know it, we start making a ton of money, like just thousands of dollars every single
Yeah.
month. So I think with those first three units, let's see, two 1,500, so 3,500. So I was making between like $4,000 to $5,000 a month on these three
Yeah.
units. So if you're saying it's double, $8,000 to $10,000 a month in your currency, I suppose somewhere in there, right?
And am I right? Those were arbitrage, Airbnb arbitrage. So you were renting someone else's owned property, other people's property, and
Right.
you were clipping the ticket, basically making a margin on the rent as a short-term rental versus their long-term rent to you.
That's
Got it?
exactly right. So it's arbitraging, right? So it's basically
Mm,
like, yeah, you take the property rent, let's say it's $1,000, and if you let's just say for easy math, let's say it's $900 a month. So that means every single day that you rent that apartment, you're spending $30 a day on rent, right? So the
hmm.
idea with arbitrage is, can you rent it for more than $30? And if you can, you're basically making that in between amount of money, the arbitrage, right? So if you can rent it for
Yeah,
$60 a night, then you're making a $30 profit every single day that you do that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that was sort of like the first big like aha moment for me was I could break into real estate and I didn't need to own property, but you know, even with that realization, I still wanted to kind of scale and figure out, okay, well, look, using other people's property is great. Love that. Was making great money, but I know that the way to, you know, I had to kind of learn that the way to true wealth is actually owning the property. And the more you can own property, the better, right? And so we kind of
Hmm.
started to shift our mind, like, okay, let's see if we can graduate out of OPP, other people's property, and let's see what else we can do. Before we did that, we got into what's called OPL, other people's land. I had this idea. I was like, all right, we don't have a ton of money to go buy a property yet. So how can we make more money? And so I started looking on Airbnb and I saw that there was these tents. They were like teepees that were booking for like $150 a night. They were booked 100%, 3 months in advance. And I was just so angry because these people that were renting these fancy tents basically were making $50,000 a year on Airbnb on a $3,000 structure. So they were making 100K your cash, right, on a $6,000 your cash structure. And I was just like angry. I was like, why am I not making $50,000 a year doing this? Like any bonehead could do this. And so I go and I pitch my partners on this. I'm like, hey guys, what if we took the money that we made from arbitrage, okay, and what if we bought a tent and put it in the middle of the desert? And they were like, yeah, I don't know about that. And I was like, guys, it's gonna work, trust me. And so I'm like, basically in their ear all the time. And then finally they're just like, dude, shut up. Just buy the tent. Stop talking about the damn tent. And I was like, all right, great. So I bought the tent. And now we were left with this whole thing. We're like, well, now what do we do? We didn't actually own land. And so we're like, well, do we need to go buy land? And so I had this brilliant idea where I would go to Craigslist. I assume y'all have Craigslist. Yeah.
We have Trade Me, which is our equivalent. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is people list,
Okay.
trade marketplace, right?
Yeah, basically. So we go to trademe.com or .nz. Yeah, so basically I put out an ad and I say, hey, do you have acreage or property or land that you own that's currently sitting vacant and it's currently costing you money every month? If so, I might be a perfect fit for you. I'm looking to rent someone's land and put my teepee or my trailer or my tent on your property. Send me a text or give me a call if this sounds interesting to you. And I got like 30 phone calls that day, and all these people are like, hey,
What?
well, what do you mean? I've got land. What do you want to do with it? And so I basically pitched all these landlords, and I was like, or not landlords, but landowners. And I said,
Hmm.
hey, I want to put a tent on your property, and I'm going to rent it on Airbnb. And if you're cool with it, I'll give you a percentage of the profits if you manage it for me. And they were like, great. How much do you want to pay me? And I was like, 25%. And so basically, I went and bought this $3,000 tent, listed it on Airbnb, and I was expecting to make, $500 a month. I was not expecting to make $5,000 a month from a $3,000 tent. And so me and my business partners were like, holy moly, we hit gold here. And, I'm obviously rubbing it in their faces. I'm like, I told you the crazy tent would work. And so they all basically co-sign and agree to like buy more. And so we keep buying a few more. And so we ended up actually buying like 4 more units. And these units are just absolutely cleaning house, making a ton of money. And then finally from there, we had the money to actually go out and buy a property. And then we went and bought our first piece of property and or our first house rather. And we actually raised that money from my business partner's mom. So, not my trust fund, but yeah, his mom actually lent it to us at a very fair rate, and she made really good money on that loan. And yeah, I think it was really cool because we had sort of proven this concept. We had learned the ropes. We could go to her and say, hey, look, we're not dumb. We know what we're doing. We make good money doing this. We just need more of it. And she was like, great. So she loaned us about $70,000 to go out and buy our first property. And it was just kind of like, smooth sailing from there. I mean, smooth sailing in that, like, I had lost a lot of sleep and a lot of
Yeah.
hairs turned gray and I've missed out on family dinners and birthday parties. But the portfolio just kind of grew massively from there because I had sort of learned this skill of using my experiences and my sweat equity to go out and basically get free houses, which is what I've been doing for, ever since.
That's fun. So it's in New Zealand, I mean, you have many, many states. You have 50 plus states there, right? So the price point, I think the median price to buy land in America is, a property in the US is about 500,000 US. And is that correct? And then you have markets that are below that where you start to have
Yeah.
more like
I
cash
mean,
flow.
yeah, there's plenty of markets where you can buy houses for like, 50 to
Yeah.
200K.
Yeah.
I would say 500K is definitely on the high end for a lot of
Right.
cities, probably.
Yeah.
But you said
So
median, so
yeah, so like by contrast here, like a first home buyer is basically, if they're in one of the main cities, it's somewhere between 700,000 and $1 million NZ dollars to buy a property. So you also need to, in a general sense, need to have 20% down payment or deposit, as we call it, which is like $200,000. In Auckland, that's 200,000, and that takes a hell of a long time to save when the average household income is like 95, right? So that's really crazy. So there are so many stories about how it's so hard to get started, it's really hard to put a deposit together, but yet everyone who's ever become an investor has had to hustle, and if you want to find a way, you will find a way, right? And I think what's really interesting in this higher interest rate climate is, like, over there I think your rates are 8.5, ours are 7.25. You have to get really creative and find a way. But what you're saying is you didn't even start like OPM, other people's money, to get a deposit here. A lot of first home buyers are using the bank of mum and dad. That's what it's called. But for you, you literally found the cash flow through arbitrage, through properties you didn't own. You literally built up your servicing or your cash flow, through all of these different creative ways. So other people's money, other people's property, and other people's land before you even came to purchase your first property. Like, what was
Yeah,
the
pretty
time?
much.
That's insane. Like, that's an incredible achievement.
I mean, I didn't really know it at the time. I was just so addicted, right? Like making
Mm,
$1,000 a month on one property, it's like very addicting when you don't make a lot of money. And so for me, I was like, holy moly, if I can do this 10 times, that's like a lot of money, right? Like if I can
mhm.
make $10,000 a month on Airbnb, like that's life-changing money. And so I never really saw it. I didn't really, OPM, OPL, OPP, these are all fancy schmancy terms that I've come up with over the years, but like I didn't call it that. I was just like desperate to get into my next property. And, for me, after I established this concept of like partnering up with people, I started posting about it on social media. This was before Robuilt and before I was a content creator, influencer, all that stuff. Far before all that. So I was just posting on my personal page and I was like, look at this cool house I bought. Look at this tent that I just pitched. Look at this and this and this. And I would have people that would reach out from my life previously, from high school, from college, that would say, hey, I see you always post about this Airbnb thing. Like, would you be interested in me like investing with you, kind of thing?
Wow.
And I'd be like, oh, that's an option. Yeah, let's do it. And I gave them a couple of options. I was like, sure. I was like, look, option one, you can just pay me an hourly fee and I'll consult you and I'll just teach you how to do it. And then option two is like we partner. And then they would always say, like, well, what does that look like? And I was like, well, you fund it and you go to the bank and you get the loan out, and then I'll run it and I'll do all the day to day and I'll teach you how to do it. And then if you ever want to just go invest without me, you can. And so I had a
Yeah.
lot of partners that would like say, yeah, that sounds great. And so I just had people that were offering to buy me these houses for free. Now, free in cost, but not free in time. But
Hmm.
over the years, that's basically how I scaled up to like a multi-million dollar portfolio, is effectively using other people's money. And then we get to today where now I'm not buying these houses in that same format anymore because I've sort of learned having multiple partners to answer to is just not the most efficient way. It's great and I'm thankful for it, but it's not the most efficient way to run my business. So now what I'm working towards is raising money from people, right? Still other people's money, but I'm raising it in the sense of a fund where people will
Hmm.
deploy 50 to $500,000 to me. It goes into like a pooled fund and then we deploy that into like massive buildings. And yeah, it's a much larger
Ah,
play, but it's much more consolidated communication and everything.
that's the progression that I see. That's an amazing summary. It's kind of like a, like you, sorry, start again. It's an incredible progression because it's how I really witnessed, the big players at BPCon. So like you're up in there with the Open Door Capital, the session that you co-hosted on stage with Brittany Arneson, Solo from Lattes and Leases,
Yeah.
was all about raising capital through social media, and even your regulation is so much looser over there, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
It's you can solicit funds as long as you have the right entity set up in the correct way and you have basically a subscribed database. You can raise and you can ask them for cash. And Solai sort of said, hey, look, I send them the Excel spreadsheet, I tell them what I want, I send the bank account, and they transfer the cash. There is no way that happens here. Like, that cannot happen here. So it's insane. But this is how you're funding the two lots of $12 million deals, right? So you have now said, hey, here's private capital. I will provide, here's the return, here's the scope, adding value. I presume you're buying a block of 20 units, you're going to add value and improve the returns, that there's enough for a return on your private lenders as well as for yourself.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily make too much money on the front end of the deal. I make my money on the exit, basically. So I'll give you an example. So typically, if I were to go out and buy a house with an investor, let's say a $500,000 house, they would put down the down payment and oftentimes the borrowing power with the bank. And then we split it 50-50. And it's great, right? Whatever. But it's a lot of work for me. And it's like, okay, yeah, is that worth it? So now what we're doing is we'll go and find, let's say, a $12 million property, the one that I'm working on right now, and to get that deal to the finish line, I need $2.5 million to do so. So I go and I pitch to basically a group of 100 investors, whoever wants to join in this deal. I tell them why I like the opportunity, what the upside is, and then I take investments as small as $50,000 and then no limit, right? Up to 50 million. However much someone wants to give me, we'll take it, right? And then
Right.
that kind of goes into this fund. And ideally the less investors, the better, so that there's less cooks in the kitchen, if you will. But
Mm-hmm.
then because it's such a big deal and there's so much risk involved, I have to kind of think of these things a little differently. And it always has to be a very investor forward type of fund where everything I do has the investor first and foremost, kind of at the forefront of protection. And so instead of me getting 50-50, most of the time it's actually like a 70-30 split. I get 30, they get 70, they get what's called a preferred return. So they get the
Mm-hmm.
first 8% of profits, and then they get a 70% cut, and then I get my 30, right? So it kind of changes, but at the end of the day, what a lot of people don't realize is it's better to own 30% of a $12 million pie than 100% of no pie, right? And so for me,
Mm-hmm.
at scale, I'm trying to get 30% of as many $12 million deals as possible, because if I can go in and raise rents and add value and crush it on the Airbnb game, well, that $12 million building, when I sell it in 5 to 7 years, will now be a $20 million building, and I'll get
Mm-hmm.
30% of that $8 million spread. And if I can do that 10 times, then, I come out of that pretty good. But I don't get paid too much until that time, right? So I'm still kind of working for quote unquote free for the first 5 to 7 years until that check lands in my bank account. But that's real estate. It's no one
Yeah.
said it's a get rich quick scheme. It is a build wealth slow plan.
That is incredible. I mean, all what I'm seeing is you started by saying, "Hey, there's this website where we can lease this house that's not even our own," and you're starting to get cash flow off that. Then you built a tent. You did some research. You bought a tent. Convinced your partners to buy a tent. And what? So within 7 years, have I got that right? You bought a tent, and then 7 years later, you're buying $12 million deals using other people's money that you're going to make, multiples of $8 million out of. Like,
Pretty much, yeah. That's the general. And I know we make it sound so easy, but
yeah,
obviously it took a long time to get here. But that's the general idea. And then one day,
yeah,
$12 million deals will seem a little small, right? And then I'm going to be
yeah,
looking at 30, 40, $50 million deals.
totally. Yeah,
So that's the ultimate projection. But for now, I'm just like, I'm in the sweet spot. I'm in the groove right now where things are going well. I really like it. I'm
yeah,
figuring it out, and I'll say this. Just because you can raise money and just because you can buy a $12 million deal doesn't mean you should. There are a lot of people that have been doing this for as long as I have that are way richer and more successful and wealthier and have way more properties. And I just was never comfortable taking on that kind of risk and leverage. So my whole thing is scale accordingly. All right. Don't
hmm,
go out and buy a $12 million building just because you have the ability to. Do scale according to what your abilities allow you to do. And so now
totally.
I'm at this point where a $12 million deal, not that bad, not that scary.
Hmm,
Could I have done it 4 years ago? Maybe, but I'm really glad I did it because now I feel
hmm.
really prepared to kind of take on a big monster like that.
Yeah, that's incredible. A lot of your social reels focus on the creativity side. Two areas I'd love to hear a bit more from you to share. The types of Airbnb, the unique propositions or the unique rentals that you have on Airbnb. I've seen pickleball courts to like reinvigorate listings that have become a bit tired. I've seen mini putt courses, and I've seen tree houses. Would you say those are some of the wildest outside of the pitching a tent ideas that you have?
Yeah, and then right now I'm actually currently working on launching a bachelorette home. So basically, a home. So if you're getting married, go book my place, and it's all pink. It's got pink murals, and it's like very girly. It's a girls' trip house, and it's called the Pink Pickle, and it's something very much outside of my comfort zone and my ability. But I hired an amazing interior designer to go out and do that. It's looking amazing, and so that will, to me, be the most out of the box Airbnb I've ever done, and I'm really
Yeah,
excited about that. I always like that I can try stuff, and most of the time it works. I would
yeah.
say so far there hasn't been a time where it hasn't. So
Hmm.
I think Airbnb is kind of it's really meant for the creative investor who wants to do something more than just long-term rents
Mm,
and cash flow very little.
mm,
That's safe, that's stable. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think
hmm.
Airbnb is for someone that just they want a little more. And that's what I've always kind of appreciated about this industry is that I can kind of just do crazy shit, and people usually book and they usually like it.
Because we don't have that same level of creativity with Airbnbs here. So is it that because from the outside, it looks like the bar is being pushed up constantly in the US with Airbnb, like creativity, more niche because then it has more value. Is there a direct correlation between how quirky or how out the box the idea is with the margin versus, if you put a typical Airbnb, yeah, it looks great, looks kind of staged, but without any specific flavor, will that not perform in the same way anymore?
I mean, the quick answer is it depends, right? Because if like it depends on where you're at, right? But I would say ultimately, if you're looking at 5 boring houses like downtown of any city, and then there's one that has like a super supreme design and aesthetic to it, people are going to book
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And so far I have found in any of the places that I've launched that typically when it's outstanding design or out of the box like that, it tends to outperform pretty much any
Yeah,
other regular house in the industry.
yeah,
So, or in that kind of my competition in that city.
yeah.
So the theory is yes. Now,
Give me a I was going to say, give me a quick snapshot of the figures. So, for example, I know you have had a great success with the pickleball. So, what were you turning over per month before, and what was the upside from installing the pickleball court, which I think from memory was 50,000 US.
22,000
Sorry,
US. So
22,000
actually,
US.
yeah, actually not that bad. Yeah. So okay. So I'll give you a really good example. I have the November data here, pretty fresh. So November of last year of 2023, no, 2022. Sorry, last November, we booked $13,700 on that property. Now it was actually not a good month. A lot of people would be like, "That's a lot of money, Rob. Why is that a bad month?" Well, our costs on that property are actually about $20,000 a month. So
Oh,
we lost about $6,500, right? Not ideal. I don't like losing money, but
why is
hey,
it
we
so
did.
high? Why are the costs so high?
It's a $3.25 million house, so it's like a 6,000 square foot mansion. It requires a lot of landscaping and pool maintenance and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we go to the drawing board and I'm like, all right, how do we not lose money on this? Because that sucks. And I start doing some, recon and looking at my competition, and they just all have amazing amenities. And I was like, well, what's one amenity that I can do better than anyone else? And so we had this dilapidated pickleball court, or it was like a tennis court, but it was like broken and chipped and stuff. So I decided, well, hey, what if we completely resurfaced it and made it into a triple pickleball court, 3 different pickleball courts? And so basically, fast forward to today, and this November of 2023, we actually had $39,000 in bookings. So we actually increased our revenue from $13,700 to $39,400. So we
Tripled.
increased it $26,000 in 1 month, which is just crazy. Yeah, triple. We tripled it.
Tripled. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is insane. Is that the largest transformation you've seen from that's
Yeah.
incredible? You obviously have like this
Yeah.
really investigative brain, like recon, really creative, like trebling from an idea. Like there's a risk in that, right? But
Yeah.
is that like I mean, I've never heard of a turnaround that fast of that magnitude.
Yeah, that's honestly one that, like I said, I wasn't necessarily thinking it would. I thought it would add a little bit, right? I had no idea it was going to be like that much money. So it's honestly been kind of cool to see. And then like for example, like March of 2022, same property, we grossed about 14,000 in bookings last year, and then we're 5 months away from March right now, and so far we've booked $30,000 in bookings. We've only booked half the month. So if we book the other half, we will probably do about $50,000 in
Yeah.
March of 2024, all from the pickleball
Wow.
court.
That's insane. Hey, now I want to just kind of touch on like I know that you are huge on automation, which it's very easy to argue. I think that like a short-term rental Airbnb property requires a lot more input, right? You get a high
Yeah,
output, but a lot more
yeah,
input. So
definitely.
you're all about the tech. So like, how do you make that work? Because you have a ton of these. How do you keep on top of it all?
So yeah, we have like a few. We have what's called like a property management system, so like a channel manager, and that basically helps us automate like our messages. It helps us automate our coordination with our cleaners, and then we also have dynamic pricing softwares that automate all of the pricing adjustments and gives us a new price every single night, depending on the supply and demand of any given day in a specific
Mm.
market. And through automating all these different things, it kind of just chops about 80% of the hard work out. There's still a
Wow.
hospitality human component to the Airbnb business, but I have
Hmm.
found when you can automate as much as possible, you're really cutting down 10 to 15 hours a week of work into like 3 to 4.
That's incredible. So I want to hear one more thing about the crazy story. Tell me like a crazy kind of story. What's happened at one of your Airbnbs, and then I want to sort of just basically finish on how. I mean, you've got all this knowledge, so the current stage of your investing journey and education that you're imparting with others. So, what's one of the craziest stories that comes first to mind with your Airbnbs, whether it be like one of your guests or
Yeah. So I kind of alluded to this like at the beginning of the show. Trying to decide if that's the one I want to tell. I think that's a pretty good one. So basically, I had a guest that like called me and they said, "Hey, these bears like just broke into my truck." And I was like, "Okay, tell me more." So my property is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is basically like the number one bear spot in the country. It's called bear country, right? Bears are everywhere. As a matter of fact, when I was setting up that property, a bear walked up about 4 feet away from me, and
what?
I ran as fast as I could in the other direction. And holy crap, I saw my life flash before my eyes. And but the bear didn't care. The bears are used to seeing people. So actually, I'll tell you this one. All right, a bear broke into my property. Boom. All right, great. The end of story. There was another time when I was setting up that property, that specific same week that the bear walked up to me, that we were all outside hanging out, and we heard someone go, no, and we were like, wait, holy shit. And so basically, the guy that was in my group ran into the house, had a gun, didn't know this. He had a gun. He runs to the next door neighbor's house, and this bear is basically corners this guy on the deck or the balcony, and he's walking up to the guy slowly, and the guy's like, "Oh, John," like trying to get someone to like unlock the door. And so the guy that was in my party like shoots the gun in the air, and the bear turns around and runs away. And basically, I guess saves the guy's life from being mauled by a bear. That all happened while I was setting up my Airbnb. There you go. That's a
Do
pretty good
you?
one.
It's insane. But I mean, okay, so this is bear country, which I had no idea about. So what are the precautions if this is so part of the goings on? Like, does everyone have a firearm for that purpose, or like, how do you? Not that you don't want that to be the go-to solution. But like,
Right.
what can you do? You just have to expect that you might find yourself cornered by a bear.
Pretty much, yeah. You have to like stay still, and like you're supposed to not leave food in your car. I mean, those people went grocery shopping, literally left the back hatch open, and then the bear like took it as an invitation and ate all their food. And then they also left the door open at my property when they left, and the bear slid the patio door all the way open, went upstairs, ate all their food, broke a lamp, and then left. So
The
you just have to
lamp
be
in the ledge.
yeah, you just have to be very, very mindful of basically like leaving food out. And if you don't leave food out, then
Wow.
most of the time the bears are going to be in and out
Okay.
pretty quickly.
Wow. Okay. It's insane. I wish we had more time for crazy stories because they sound amazing and unlike any stories that we can say we have here. But hey, so you are imparting all of this wisdom that you have. So how are you? I mean, you're a coach. You mentioned that earlier. So how does it work with you? What's the kind of system that you have, and what are you coaching people on?
Yeah, so I have a program called Host Camp, and it's basically a short-term rental mentorship program where we people come into the program and we teach them every single aspect of short-term rentals. We teach them how to start it, how to optimize it, how to automate it, how to scale it. And we use a lot of different strategies within that program. We teach people, how to use OPP, OPL, OPM, all that good stuff. And now we just launched a new product where we teach people how to creatively finance their properties and how to basically cut out the bank and get into properties where they can take over other people's payments. So I've been doing that now for about 2.5 years now. I've got about 2,300 students and counting. And it's really cool because I basically teach the next generation of short-term rental hosts. They're all cooler than me, more successful, make more money, have way better listings. And it's a bit bittersweet because I'm training my competition on how to be a much better host than I, but I'm honestly really proud of them. And the listings that come out of that program are world class.
I've seen a few of them I see how you kind of worship them and hero them as well and say, hey, look,
Yeah.
this is amazing to this new student. And it's incredible because you're really lifting the bar, which ultimately is great for the guests, great for the overall experience, great for STR as well.
Yeah.
And so how do they
I'm just a proud dad over here,
proud day?
Yeah.
Do they watch Bluey?
So that's what's required reading in the
On
curriculum.
demand? Yeah, in
Yeah.
the portal. Yeah, first 2 seasons of Bluey baseline content. And so do they work with you on like is it a set program basis or is it per month? What's the way that they can engage or for how long?
Yeah, so basically these days we have like a 6 month mentorship. We call it like an accelerator. So if you come into it, you have 6 months to like go to all of our group coaching calls, our on demand content. I want to say is probably like 20 hours at this point. And it's all kind of self paced and all that stuff. But then the mentorship side of it, we have group coaching calls several times a week. Like today we had 3. And so really no matter
Wow.
where you are in your schedule, there's always a call happening at some point. And it's just, yeah, really big community. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I teach people how to do this for free on YouTube. When you join my program, it's a little bit more about connecting with other hosts and being
Hmm.
part of a bigger community. But yeah, it's a 6 month program. And the idea is by the end of it, you leave a short term rental superstar.
That's fantastic. I love it so
Yeah,
much. Wow. Hey, thanks for sharing that. I think there are a ton of ideas here that Kiwis, especially, but whoever else might be watching, can rinse and repeat. A ton of
for sure.
inspiration and creative juices from your brain. I'll make sure that we link your website and your channel. And if anyone wants to look up what you offer and if they can jump in, then I'll make that all available because you've got a wealth of knowledge and I think some creative ideas that I've never seen elsewhere. So thanks for
Sure.
having a chat with me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. And for everyone that's listening to this, go like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, go leave a comment about your favorite thing that happened in today's episode.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks so much. Cool. I'm hoping to catch up with you US side sometime mid-year actually. So hopefully
Awesome.
catch up then. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk soon then.
Thank you. Thank you.